Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Hey, everybody. Good morning or afternoon or night. I don't know. Depends on when you're listening, I guess. Welcome back to Unbound Off Script. I'm spending a lot of time on the podcast this month because I have to get a lot of content recorded, not only for Unbound, but for some other things. So I'm taking advantage of the time that I have. No, it probably seems like I'm putting a lot of energy into worrying about season 3. Hell, we haven't even ended season 1 yet, and season 2 hasn't even aired. But I kind of feel in my heart that I kind of want to talk about the cost of finally telling the truth. Not the financial cost, though there is one. Not the time cost, though I've spent hundreds of hours and possibly many, many years on this. But I want to talk about the relational cost, the potential fallout, the possibility that people I love, family, friends, people who've been in my life for decades might not like what I have to say, might not understand, might even walk away. And I need to tell you why I'm doing it anyway. There's this phrase that's kind of been shacking up in my head for a long ass time, and it came to me from Doc, of course. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. And it sounds nice, right? Like simple and clean, a good boundary. Yeah, for a long time, I've kind of used that phrase to justify my silence. Telling the truth would cost me my peace, I told myself. I convinced myself even. So I stayed quiet. I protected other people's comfort and I kept secrets that, well, some of them weren't even mine to keep because speaking up would create conflict or it might make people uncomfortable and it could potentially cost me relationships. If it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. So I paid with a different price instead, I guess. I paid with my mental health and my physical health and my sense of self. I paid with decades of carrying shame that didn't belong to me. I paid with food addiction and self-destruction and the belief that I was toxic to everyone I loved. I paid with my voice. And what I finally figured out, I had it backwards the whole time. The silence was costing me my peace, not the truth. Before I tell you what silence cost me, I need to tell you what it cost other people. Because the thing about carrying secrets and trauma, you don't just hurt yourself, you hurt everyone around you too. And I've hurt people. I've hurt a lot of people. In a lot of ways. As a young child and as a young teenager, I was discovering boundaries while having none of my own. I was being bullied, for sure, but I was also a bully. I hurt people because I was hurting and I didn't know any other way to exist. As I got older, I hurt my friends and family with lying. Not because I enjoyed it, but because I had developed this twisted logic that if I lied in a certain way, they would be able to pry the truth out of me. That if they guessed it, if they asked the right questions, then I wouldn't be the one telling. They'd be the ones discovering or guessing. And somehow in my sick, traumatized brain, that would protect me from further harm. If they figured it out, if they figured out what I was going through and what was happening to me, I reasoned it wasn't my fault. They knew. Because I hadn't violated my abuser's rules. I hadn't broken the silence I'd been trained to keep. They guessed it, so it's not my fault. I didn't tell anyone. They guessed it. That's what I was hoping for, and you'll hear about that. So I lied and I hurt people who were just trying to love me. Back then I hurt my boyfriend a lot. I hurt friends, relationships that were unsuccessful, either because I actively sabotaged them or because I just couldn't be around people who didn't know the whole story. Because when people don't know the truth about you, the full truth, they behave in ways that feels intolerable when you're kind of carrying what I was carrying. People would ask innocent questions that felt like interrogations. They'd make fully reasonable requests that felt like demands of me, or they'd expect things from me that I couldn't give because I was barely surviving. And the worst of all, and it happened even in adulthood, they would gossip about me behind my back. Maybe because, they didn't have the whole truth and they didn't know what to do with that or how to make sense of it. So they would talk about me with other people in awful and cruel ways, like not even in productive ways. But still, it happened. And instead of, telling them why, I would just leave, or I would push them away or destroy the relationship before they could get close enough to see what I was hiding, right? I carry shame about all of that, real, heavy, legit shame. Because the truth is I hurt people, and some of that hurt was my fault, trauma or no trauma. I made choices, I said things, I did things, and people got hurt. And one of the reasons I've stayed silent for so long is because I was afraid that telling my story would kind of sound like I was making excuses for my behavior. Like I would be saying I was hurt, so it's okay that I hurt other people. It's not okay. It was never okay. I'm not excusing anything at all. And I'm not telling my full story so that people will excuse me and my shitty behavior. I just want people to know and understand better why I behaved the way that I did. Explaining isn't excusing. So I can acknowledge that I hurt people while also acknowledging that I was a hurt person and I didn't have the tools to do better. I can say that, yes, I was responsible for ruining some relationships that I had, but it also wasn't all me in some of them. And I can confidently say that I know without a doubt I am better off without some of those people. I can take responsibility for my actions while also understanding the context that shaped those actions. And I can feel shame about what I did while also having compassion for who I was when I did it. All those things can be true at the same time. Staying silent about all of it, about what was done to me and what I did to others, that's not protecting anyone. It's just ensuring that the cycle of hurt keeps spinning. And I want to end it. I want it to stop. So let me tell you what keeping quiet has cost me over the past 3 decades. It cost me honest relationships with my family, with friends, with people who thought they knew me, but only knew the version I was willing to show them. My parents didn't know the full truth until 2020. 2020. Talking about things that happened in my teenage years. And they didn't learn about any of it until I was well into my 40s. Think about that. Think about how many conversations we had over those decades where I was performing normalcy, where I was pretending everything was fine when nothing was fine. Just think about how lonely that is. It cost me my body, literally. I gained hundreds of pounds trying to build armor around secrets I couldn't speak out loud. Food became the only way I knew how to cope with feelings I couldn't express and memories that I couldn't share. Every pound was a brick in the wall that I was building between myself and the truth. Years of trying to heal from things that I wouldn't name. Trying to get better while refusing to be honest about what I was trying to get better from. Back in the day, I'd sit in the therapist's office and talk around the truth. I'd dance around it. I'd give them pieces, but never the whole picture. And then I'd wonder why I wasn't getting better. You can't heal from what you won't acknowledge. It cost me self-respect because every time I stayed quiet to protect someone else's comfort, I was telling myself that their peace mattered more than mine. Their feelings were more important than my truth, that I should keep suffering in silence rather than risk making anyone else uncomfortable. It cost me relationships with good people who might have loved me better if they had known the truth, who might have understood why I was the way I was, who might have had compassion instead of confusion, but I never gave them that choice. And like I said, it cost me my voice, literally and figuratively. I learned to stay quiet and to make myself small and to disappear into the background of my own life because being seen felt too fucking dangerous. And you know what? That's bullshit. I want to say, if you're listening to this and you've been keeping quiet about something, abuse or trauma or loss or anything that feels too big or too ugly or too shameful to say out loud, I need you to hear this. Your silence is costing you more than your honesty ever could. I know it doesn't feel that way. I know speaking up feels dangerous. Like you're about to blow up your entire life. That's where I'm at right now. Like people will judge you and abandon you and use your words against you. And maybe some of them will. I'm not going to lie to you and say everyone will understand. I know what might be coming. Some people won't understand. Some people will be angry that you're disrupting their version of your story. Their version of your story. Their version. Some people will make your truth about them instead of about you. The people who walk away when you tell the truth weren't safe for you anyway. If someone can only love you while you're silent about the things that hurt you, that's not love. It's just not. If someone needs you to keep lying to maintain the relationship, that relationship is already broken. If telling your truth costs you people who claim to care about you, those people were costing you your peace all along. So I'm about to share my story publicly, the whole thing. Like I said in a previous episode somewhere, or maybe I haven't, I don't know. I've said it somewhere. Only one person in my life knows every single detail. And everyone else is about to learn it. I mean, anyone who wants to listen to it anyway. The parts my parents didn't know until 2020, the parts that will make people in my life uncomfortable maybe, might change how some people see me. And I'm terrified. I'm terrified that my family will be hurt. My friends will feel betrayed. People might think I'm exploiting my pain for attention or money or whatever motive they decide to assign to me. I'm scared people will focus on the harm I caused instead of understanding why I caused it. I'm scared people will think I'm using trauma as an excuse instead of an explanation. And I'm kind of scared people will walk away. I'm terrified of the cost, but I think it costs more to continue carrying the secrets and continuing to protect everyone else while destroying myself, Continuing to live like the most important thing about me is what I hide rather than who I actually am. That costs me everything. My peace, my authenticity, my voice, my life, all of that stuff. So I'm choosing differently now. I'm choosing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Even though it might cost me relationships, might cost me comfort, choosing to speak up. I'm choosing my peace now, finally, over everyone else's approval. Because again, if it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. And silence has basically been bankrupting me for decades. There's something else I've been working or thinking about as I've been working through all of this. That old poem, the Reason, Season, Lifetime one? The idea that some people come into your life for a reason, some for a season, and some for a lifetime. I used to hear that and feel defensive, like losing people meant I'd failed somehow. But over the years, I've come to really appreciate it because it kind of hits different now. Some people were in my life to teach me something, even if what they taught me was painful. And some were only there for a chapter, and the chapter ending doesn't mean the story was worthless, And a very small handful, the lifetime people, those are the ones who stay even when shit gets uncomfortable. Those are the ones who can hold both who you were and who you are becoming. They see something more in you. Understanding that has made it easier to accept that not everyone is meant to stay. And honestly, some relationships aren't supposed to survive the truth. Some were never built for it, and that's okay. Letting go doesn't mean I'm heartless. It means, I finally understand the difference between losing someone and actually releasing them. Before I go further here, I just want to address some questions I've gotten from listeners over the past few weeks in a private group that I'm in, um, because I thought they were good and maybe relevant to the situation, and I'm going to answer them as well. I'm not the only one wrestling with whether to speak up or stay quiet in this particular group that I'm in. Um, I'm a little bit further along than some people, so they have questions for me. The first one was, how do you know when it's the right time to tell your story? And honestly, I don't think there's ever a perfect time. There's just the moment when staying silent becomes more painful than speaking up. And I think for me, that moment came during the pandemic, when everything kind of went quiet and my internal noise got so fucking loud I couldn't ignore it anymore. I realized I'd spent decades just surviving, and it was time to figure out how to actually live. So, this has been a bit of a process over the last several years. If you're waiting for permission, you already have it because your story is yours. You don't need anyone's approval to tell it. So, that's that. Another question was, what if telling my truth hurts people I love? This is actually the question that kept me silent for 30 years. Some of my closest friends don't know everything that I went through, and they're going to be shocked. And my sister doesn't know, but I'm going to write about moments when she was there and could have known and should have known, but it's just so hard to explain. Like, you'll if you listen, you'll know, you'll understand. Like, my aunt knows a bit more now, because we had a lot of conversations several years ago, and but yeah, like, the people closest to me, not everybody knows everything. So I stayed quiet over the years because I was afraid that I would hurt people. And, your truth might hurt people, but your silence is hurting you. And often it's hurting them too, even if they don't realize it. And even if you don't realize it, the hurt that comes from honesty is different from the hurt that comes from deception. One creates the possibility for real connection and understanding and bonding for sure. And then the other just creates distance. So tell your truth with as much kindness as you can, but definitely tell it. I don't want to give away too much that I've written about, but many people already know a big part of my story because of a video where I was very vulnerable. I put it on social media in late summer of 2020, I think. I can't remember exactly. During the pandemic, I realized that, like, my biggest fear was that I'd hurt my parents when I released that video. I released it and I was terrified. I'm like, if anyone sees my parents, please tell them I love them and please, like, give them a hug. And, because I was just so afraid that I had hurt my parents. But they sent me flowers with a note that said they were proud of me. And it was so humbling. It was really hard. It's hard to know which way it'll go with anybody who's part of your story or part of your life, and they're about to hear a part of your story. People who may feel that they were entitled to know the whole time, and they might, they feel upset that they never did know certain things, or that you kept such significant things from them for so long. They might feel hurt by that. And only you can know if you're ready for that. And if you are, only you can know if you can handle the potential fallout. And, like, I know I'm ready. Another question that came to me was, how do you deal with people who say you should just move on or let it go? Oh boy. I wish I could, but my experience is absolutely are like the reason I am the way that I am today. People who've never carried trauma don't understand how it works. A lot of people still believe or think that healing is linear. They think forgiveness means forgetting. They think that you can just decide to feel better and then you do. I'm sure those people mean well, usually, but, they just don't get it. And that's okay. I'm not telling my story for them. I'm telling it for the people who do get it. the people who've been carrying their own secrets and need to know that they're not alone. And I'm telling it for me because I need to get it out there. I just need to get it. I need to release it from me. You know? Another question, what if you regret sharing your story publicly? I might. I don't know yet. What I do know is that I already regret staying silent for so long. I regret the years that I spent hiding, and I regret the relationships I sabotaged because I was too afraid to be honest, and I regret the harm I caused by not dealing with my own pain. So if I'm going to have regrets either way, I'd rather regret being honest than regret staying silent. I'm totally at peace with the fact that I have 3 incredibly supportive men in my immediate life who will always be here for me. Now I know that I have more, but I know for sure these 3 will never, ever leave me behind. There's a safety in that for me. It's a safety that I've needed my whole life, and I finally have it. So there's that. Another question I was asked was, how do you protect yourself while still being vulnerable? And I think that that's a great question because it's something I've had to think about a lot, For me, protection looks like boundaries. I'm telling my story on my terms, in my own words, through my own platforms. I'm not answering to tabloids or giving interviews to people who want to sensationalize my pain. Thank God I'm not, one of those people who, they do that too. I'm just a nobody in a nowhere land, I'm also being selective about what I share. Vulnerable doesn't mean unfiltered, but I am pretty unfiltered. I'm being honest, but I'm not sharing every single detail. Some things are mine to keep, and I will. But I'm also surrounding myself with people who are safe, my close friends, my family members who've earned my trust, people who can kind of hold space for this without making it about them. I think vulnerability without boundaries is just self-destruction, and, I live that. So protect yourself while you're being honest. Back to what I was saying before the Q&A, kind of what I want anyone listening to take away from this episode. You don't owe anyone your silence, not your family, not your friends, not the person who hurt you, not the people who mean well but don't understand. Your story is yours, your truth is yours, your voice is yours. And if telling your truth disrupts someone else's peace, that's not your problem to solve. I'm not saying be cruel. I'm not saying weaponize your story or use it to hurt people. I'm saying that your healing is not contingent on everyone else's comfort. You can tell your truth with kindness and still tell your truth, and you can honor other people's feelings and still honor your own, and you can love people and still set them free to react however they're going to react. But you can't sacrifice your peace to maintain theirs. Not anymore, because the cost is too high. Something else about the cost of silence, it doesn't just affect you, it affects the people who come after you. Every time someone stays silent about abuse, they make it easier for abusers to keep abusing. Every time someone hides their trauma, they make it harder for other survivors to speak up. Every time someone pretends everything is all fine and dandy when it's not, they perpetuate the idea that we should all just suffer in silence and smile through our pain. I stayed pretty quiet for a long time, over 3 decades. And in those years, how many other people stayed silent because they didn't see anyone else speaking up? And how many people thought they were alone because I was pretending to be fine? Or how many more people did my abuser get hurt by because I didn't stand up to him and have him punished for what he did? I can't get those years back. I can't undo the silence. I can't fix other people who may have been hurt by him. But I can stop being silent now, and I am. And maybe if I speak up, someone else will feel less alone. Someone else will find the courage to tell their truth. Someone else will realize that survival isn't enough. They deserve to actually live. And I think that that's worth whatever all of this is going to cost me. Season 3 of Unbound, The Other Side of Quiet, is coming soon. It's going to be heavy. I'm going to talk about things I've never spoken about publicly about abuse and trauma from my teenage years, about things that happened to me that my own parents didn't know the full truth about until 5 years ago, about the ways that I hurt people while trying to protect them. The decades I spent silent because speaking just felt too dangerous, because I was conditioned in my teen years to believe that if I spoke out, terrible things would happen to me, to my pets, to my friends, my loved ones, anything. I'm going to talk about being bullied and becoming a bully, about lying to people who loved me, about relationships I destroyed, about the shame that I still kind of carry today for the harm that I caused. I'll be talking about food addiction and weight gain and losing hundreds of pounds and therapy and healing and learning to trust my own voice again. And I'm going to talk about what happens when silence becomes survival, and then, life kind of tells you to speak the fuck up. Some people aren't going to like it. Some people are going to wish I had stayed quiet, I'm sure. Some people are going to think I'm airing dirty laundry or being dramatic or using my pain for attention. I don't know. Some people might be insulted that they didn't know this before. They had to hear it here. I don't know. And they may walk away from me because of it. And I'm doing it anyway, because my peace is worth more than their comfort. I know that sounds selfish, but how they choose to react and feel, that's up to them and not up to me. My voice, I think, matters more than their approval of me. So if you don't like me, oh well, that's okay. Because if this story helps even one person stop sacrificing their peace to maintain someone else's, it will be worth it to me. Absolutely. If it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. I believe that. I really do. For so long, I got it backwards, Silence cost me a lot. My health, relationships, my sense of self, my voice, my peace. I'm done paying that price. I'm done. Time to speak up. Besides, I'll always have my 3. If you're listening to this and you're carrying secrets that are costing you peace, I want you to know you're not alone. You don't have to carry them forever. You don't have to protect everyone else while you're drowning. You don't have to stay silent just because speaking up feels scary. Put your ego away if that's what's getting in the way. Put your fear away if that's what's getting in the way. Your story matters. Your truth matters. Your voice matters. And I called the book The Other Side of Quiet because the other side of quiet is more beautiful than you can imagine. Thanks so much for listening to this off-script episode of Unbound. If you're struggling with whether to speak up about your own story, please reach out. You can talk to me, therapist, friend, support group, join the Facebook group, whatever. You don't have to figure this out alone. All the support, resources, contact info, all that's in the show notes as always. Take care of yourselves, protect your peace, and remember that silence has a cost too. So speak up. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit authorbethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.